Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?
What's up, nerds? Welcome to another episode of the Multiverse Report. We are recapping the week's worth of nerd news from the Red Room to Budapest and everywhere in between. We're got a packed show this week. We're talking about Black Widow. We're going to do spoiler review of Black Widow. We're talking What If trailer. We're talking Peacemaker. We're talking San Diego Comic-Con, a bunch of other news. And we're excited to get to it. My name is Mike Gibson, and with me, as always, is my fellow Star Wars t-shirt wearing Steve Howler. How you doing, bud?
Totally intentional. I love how we do this every time that we just sit down in front and we're like, oh, cool. Doing good on this front, man. Another week with way too much news to cover, and we're going to try and do it in about an hour.
Yeah, we're going to try. We've been going long the last few weeks. We're going to try to maybe cut it down a little bit, but we say that, and then
we always try.
One thing leads to another. Yeah, exactly. We are going to get to a Black Widow review and reaction pretty quick here, but we did want to up front kind of bow our heads and pay tribute real quick to the great Richard Donner, who passed away this week, film director extraordinaire. Directed Lethal Weapon, Goonies, and for purposes of this podcast, we're thanking him for directing the original Superman movie, which really is the blueprint for all that came after it. It was like the first real, honest-to-God superhero movie that took the material seriously and, worked hard to execute it that was in a way that was faithful to the character, and, just took it seriously and put it up in a way that audiences could relate to and understand that it's a serious movie and it's not just schlock for kids or dime store pulp books or anything like that. So if it hadn't been for Richard Donner making that movie, who knows what the state of superhero movies would be today.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And things I didn't realize with Donner, in your other line of movies you enjoy quite vociferously, The Omen. I did not realize that he was involved in that. Scrooged on the complete opposite end of the spectrum from The Omen. And then he also produced the X-Men movies.
That's right. He and his wife, Laura Schuler Donner. That's right.
So
I forgot about that.
More impact than I realized on things that I've some seminal movies between Superman, The Goonies, Lethal Weapon was phenomenal, Scrooged, stuff that I go back to and watch repeatedly. Free Willy, apparently.
Yeah. No way, really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So.
Wow, lots of stuff.
Yeah.
Were you a big fan of that Superman movie growing up? Was that a thing that? Because I don't know. For me, it was a thing that I saw similar to Star Wars that I just wanted to watch over and over again when I was 6 or whatever.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those where at the time it didn't dawn on me, but every time it was one of those where you saw it and it would stay on. You weren't going past that. So it was definitely a work of art.
Yeah. And what's weird? I actually watched it recently, probably within the last 4 months or something, and you are a full hour into that movie before you see Superman.
Really?
It starts on Krypton, and then you're with Clark as a young boy or a high school kid or a young adult for a long time. And he goes into Metropolis, starts the day of the planet. It's a long time before you see him put on that, those blue tights. Which makes it for a huge, wonderful reveal, and the fact that they can make such a good movie leading up to that, you're not necessarily looking at your watch saying where's Superman, where's the hero? It's well paced, it's incredibly well acted by Christopher Reeve, and a wonderful cast surrounding him. But Margot Kidder as Lois Lane stands out, obviously. It's such a well-made film that you don't realize it's an hour. I just happened to pause it and I'm like, wait a second, I haven't seen Superman yet. I'm at 45 minutes into this thing and I got a little bit to go. But yeah, just a great movie, and again, huge contribution to the world of nerddom.
Oh, absolutely.
I should say. Yeah, unmistakable. So Steve, let's get into it. Our big story this week, after saying rest in peace to Richard Donner, of course, how are we not leading off with our thoughts and feelings about Black Widow, the Marvel movie finally released after so long, after a year of delays, over a year of being delayed. It was supposed to come out in May of 2020, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And then for a while it was going to come out a couple months later, and that quickly went down the tubes, and it was going to come out in the fall, and then it was going to come out, I don't know, I think earlier this summer, and then it finally got landed in July. So finally, we have seen the long waited for. I personally been waiting for this movie for at least minimum 10 years. I thought they should have made their Black Widow movie. There should have been a Black Widow movie in phase 1 or 2 of the MCU, in my personal opinion. A lot of people's personal opinions. Finally got it this week. I did not go to theater to see it. I shelled out the $30 to watch it on Disney Plus. How about you? Did you see it at theater, or did you watch it at home?
Yeah, I definitely watched it at home, figuring that, I can make just as good a popcorn and not have to deal with a theater. So.
Yeah. Yep.
And also, with a toddler and a new dog and everything else, it's like, we'll just do this in the house.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yep, my wife and I watched it last night, and Steve, I gotta say, I mean, you and I have barely talked about this movie, I'm interested to hear what you really have to say as we get into it. I loved it. I thought it was great. I didn't know what it was going to be about, really. I mean, besides like the trailers, I hadn't watched any of the more recent trailers because I was like, I'm going to watch this movie no matter what. I've been waiting for it forever. I saw the trailers a year ago when those were coming out. I don't want to, spoil anything for myself. I want to go into this more or less blind and not look at any of the new trailers. So I didn't really know what to expect or know what it was about or remember necessarily stuff. I just knew Taskmaster was in it, and other Black Widows were probably going to be in it from the stuff that I remember in the trailers. And man, I just thought it was great. It super action packed, relentless, great espionage. I felt, it felt kind of like a Bourne movie at some points, like the jumping off rooftops down into motorcycle chases, or like Mission Impossible or something, which it should be. It's an espionage spy, or she's an espionage spy character, and that's the kind of genre that movie should be in, like action-packed thrill ride spy kind of thing. And I thought they crushed it. I thought it was great. What'd you think?
Absolutely. And I'll have to. I'm contractually obligated to go back and watch it with my wife, since she wasn't able to watch it last night. So I ended up watching it, and I walked upstairs when I was done. She had a bunch of stuff she was doing upstairs, and I walked upstairs and was literally like, that was in the top tier of the standalone movies they've done.
Yeah,
like, I would
top
put it
10 MCU for me, for sure.
Yeah, I would definitely put it in the top half of what they've put out. And I don't know if that was just first watch, like waiting for it, not what I expected. Like, there were definitely some subversion of expectations around the core group of what I don't know if I had any idea what to expect from the family, but it wasn't what we got, and I liked what we got.
Yeah. So I agree with you. At this point, I'm going to say we're probably going to get into a few spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, I don't know, pause it or just skip ahead until we're talking about something else. The next thing we're going to talk about is the What If trailer from Marvel. So if you hear us, just hit that little 30-second button until you hear us talking about that.
Yep.
So anyway, spoiler alert starting now. The family was not what I expected. I mean, from Yelena was pretty much, I guess, what I expected her to be. There was rumors that they were setting her up to be like the new Black Widow, since we all know. Second level of spoiler alert for Endgame if you haven't seen Endgame.
And if you've somehow seen Black Widow without Endgame.
Yes, we're spoiler alerts inside spoiler alerts right now.
Yep.
If you haven't seen Endgame, she dies. Knowing or getting the feeling that they're setting up Florence Pugh's character Yelena to become the new Black Widow, or a new Black Widow type character, at least in the MCU going forward. That seemed like it was definitely what happened. I was expecting one of the the mom or the dad character, I was expecting them to have like a heel turn and be a bad person, and they kind of were, but so was Natasha,
Right.
kind of bad at the same time, or was. But that didn't happen, and they all ended up fighting on the same team and bringing down the bad guy together, which was great. And it did a lot of stuff. There were certain things I guess I expected that I didn't get, but in a way that I liked. Like one of the things I mentioned to you earlier was that I expected there to be more tie-ins or references to either things that we had seen in Infinity War and Endgame, which we did get a couple of those. But I kind of there, besides the Yelena thing, I expected there to be more hints or starting of plot threads for things that we will end up seeing down the line.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when Marvel does that, they are blatant and they are obvious. And I didn't really catch anything unless they got, some tricks up their sleeves. But I really liked that about it. I liked that it was very much a standalone film for Black Widow, and it wasn't bogged down by having to set up future events or having to start a storyline that's going to be paid off 5 movies from now. It was very much just like her story. You could really show this movie to somebody that hasn't really watched all the other MCU movies, and they would get into it pretty quick. Like, it takes place after Civil War, so she's on the run, and all you got to know is she's on the run. You don't even have to know really why. Like, okay, right. She's on the run, and now I'm in, and I am following it. That's all you need to know, and it plays out wonderfully.
Yeah, and they overall, like you mentioned, that family dynamic. I don't know people's thoughts in general because I haven't really talked to too many other people about it, but
yeah.
David Hopper as Alexei Shostakov, the Red Guardian. Yeah. For what he was supposed to be, I thought he absolutely nailed it. Like, yes, he was cheesy. Yes, he was the asshole. Yes, he was a giant dick. And it worked perfectly. Like, the fact that both of his daughters at numerous points blatantly were hating his guts and still working on him. Like, he and Melina both worked out as the anti-hero very, very well. I'm glad there wasn't a redemption for either of them. I'm glad there wasn't happy endings. It was just like, no, they like Yelena and Natasha needed them to do what they did, and they did it, and that was that.
Yeah, exactly. Like they did agree to help her, but it wasn't necessarily like a redemption arc. They're like, yeah, we all know we've all done bad stuff, and we're gonna do this thing because it's what should be done. This bad guy is a real bad guy. I hated that guy, by the way. Like, it did a pretty good job. And, the MCU gets a lot of flack for forgettable villains, or villains that are just there. And we didn't get a ton of background on this guy. But I really hated him. Like, it did not take much. Like, I was in it. I wouldn't necessarily call him a throwaway villain because they were able to make me feel such emotion towards him in such a little bit of time, really, because they made him so despicable.
Right.
And they talk a lot about what he's done. You don't really see him do those things, but when you finally do meet him in the movie, you immediately believe, I don't know the name of that actor, but the way that actor is talking, you immediately believe that he is the guy that did all these despicable things that they were talking about in the movie. Like, there's no question. Like, yeah, this guy's an asshole. This guy's evil.
Yeah. Ray Winstone was the actor who played him.
Ray Winstone. He was really good. Yeah,
Dreykov was immediately, like you said, you knew what he was. I guess to equate, he was almost like, and I'm not, this is probably an over-exaggeration, but like Joffrey Baratheon from Game of Thrones levels of immediately you knew, I'm going to hate this guy.
Yeah.
And he did a phenomenal job of portraying someone that you were supposed to hate and had good reason to hate. And it really, like, even the scene where, again, hard spoiler, the scene where Natasha snaps her nose.
It's awesome.
That whole scene with him, beating her and then him not being strong enough her smacking her on the face.
Yeah.
It was like through all of that, even the physical altercation, not to mention all the mental gymnastics he was throwing her through before that or after that.
Yeah.
Like the way he portrayed that was just very visceral and very almost disquieting at numerous points, where I was just like, you got that kind of feeling, like I am very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And he did a phenomenal job of it. Of putting you in that spot where you're supposed to be that you don't want to be.
What did you think about I'm just gonna say it one more time. Hard spoiler warning right now. What did you think about the reveal of Taskmaster being the daughter?
So I've come to think about this in two different ways, because I had a lot of trouble because I know Taskmaster and what Taskmaster could be and should be in comic world. If you went into this, and I'm going to test this theory, and well, you actually could test this theory because I'm pretty sure your wife doesn't know who Taskmaster is, but with my wife, I'm going to find out what her thoughts are on it. But I feel like for the story, what they did fit very, very well. But if you know what Taskmaster is and could be, and is this quipping, never shuts up, kind of.
Oh, okay.
Also, Deadpool type mercenary, that you would see in the comics. You're like, oh, he got done dirty, but for the standalone in the film, I think it actually worked pretty well. Like when I was able to separate Taskmaster from Taskmaster, it worked. I thought it worked pretty well.
Yeah. Okay. See, I didn't know. I don't think I've ever read anything with Taskmaster in it, so I didn't know that he was quippy, Deadpool level, or Peter Parker level.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sounds like. So to me, it worked completely. And yeah, I mean, I knew enough that knew that he's male in the books or in other mediums, but like you said, and I didn't pick up on that twist until right before they revealed it.
Same.
But like while they were talking, like Natasha's talking to the bad guy, I was like, oh, that's who it is.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, him not speak, or sorry, the Taskmaster not speaking made him more terrifying. And I'm even saying him because I'm used to it, but like, made her more terrifying. And there was a big rumor going around on Twitter like a month or so ago that the twist was going to be Taskmaster was Rachel Weisz's character. And I saw people like retweeting that rumor, being like, oh, all those misogynist fanboys are going to be so mad when Taskmaster is revealed to be a woman. And then pretty early on in the movie, you realize, oh, it can't be.
Right.
It can't be Rachel Weisz. So I was like, oh, okay, well, that theory's out. But then I was like, oh, it is a woman.
Right.
And that's still awesome. And that's something that my wife and I were talking about. She really enjoyed this movie as well, and she's seen the majority of the MCU movies with me, and she likes some of them more than others. But she loved this movie, and we were talking about how, we are still kind of in the infancy of female-led superhero action movies being made. For a long time, they either would be made and they wouldn't be taken seriously, so they wouldn't be made seriously. I mean, so like a movie like Catwoman, which is terrible because the script is awful, and it was just, the thought wasn't put into it that something like, the Tim Burton Batman movies or the Christopher Reeve, Richard Donner Superman,
since you mentioned Catwoman, though, still props to Halle Berry for actually accepting her Razzie.
Yes, absolutely. Props all day for that. But, there's a stigma around that, and Hollywood executives didn't want to make big budget female-led superhero movies, and until Wonder Woman made $1 billion, and kind of proved that wrong, and Captain Marvel made $1 billion, and it's the same way. But what my wife really appreciated about this movie is it's different than Wonder Woman, or it's more similar to Birds of Prey in that it seemed just like an action movie where the main character happened to be a woman.
Right.
And it wasn't like both Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel have a part of the story of it is that this is a woman doing things that a woman doesn't normally do, and she's getting pushback from men in her life, whether that be just the patriarchy of England in World War One, or Shield, or I'm blanking on the other Kree soldiers or whatever that she was working with.
Yeah, Marvel and all that.
This was just just a Black Widow movie. It just happened to be. It wasn't like, I hate using the term feminist agenda, but it wasn't like, it wasn't trying to make that point. It wasn't trying to like say, look how tough Natasha is and how she can kick all these men's asses. It wasn't trying to. It was saying that because that's what it was, but it wasn't like, you know what I mean, right?
It totally
overt. Like it
totally made the point. Like it 100% made that point, but it didn't set out to make that point.
Yeah,
it set out to tell a good story, and it just happened to. It's a little over the top in Captain Marvel, where there's a whole fight scene choreographed to the tune, or the "Just a Girl" by No Doubt is playing, and that's pretty on the nose. And I like Captain Marvel. I'm not talking bad about either of those movies. I love both those movies. Both Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel are great, and Birds of Prey is my favorite DCEU movie. But speaking for my wife, she just really appreciated it being, not treating her with kid gloves in any kind of way, or not. It was refreshing to her to not have that point made and just have it. This is just a movie. Yeah, absolutely. Great. And you could have slotted, like you said, it could have been a James Bond movie. It could have been a Bourne Identity movie. It could have been a Mission Impossible movie. It could have been a different Avenger. It could have been Steve Rogers or whatever. Absolutely.
And it still would have felt the same.
Yeah, you could have thrown, Steve and Bucky in for Yelena and Natasha, and it would have been, very, very similar feel and vibe to it. And I'm very glad they just made the movie.
That's also not to say that they weren't. I thought they were written as women very well.
Yes.
And I thought the relationship between the sisters was done very well, and the way they loved each other, but also were, clearly had been estranged. I thought everything was treated very well.
Also, that fight scene between them at the beginning was just, looking back on the movie, that might have been the peak of everything. That was great.
Yeah, when they each did the move where they stole each other's guns at the exact same time, and that was great. Yep, that was so good.
So yeah.
Well,
what do you think we get out of spoiler territories and into the crazy wild shit that could happen in literally 1 month from today, August 11th?
I know we've talked about this before, but it still is crazy to me, the amount of Marvel stuff that we still have coming. And the rest of this year, we've gotten, almost 3 full Marvel television shows so far this year. We got a full-length movie in Black Widow. We're getting more full-length movies before the end of the year. 3 more full-length movies before the end of the year.
Shang-Chi and Eternals
and Spider-Man.
Spidey. Yep, I forgot Spidey was dropping in December.
Yeah, and we're getting a show called What If, which we got the full trailer for. If you're not familiar, What If was a long-running Marvel comic. It was kind of like they would introduce it for a while, and then it got canceled, and then they would bring it back every once in a while. And it's basically a way for Marvel to tell different stories, like what if Peter didn't get bitten by a radioactive spider, or what if somebody else got bitten by the radioactive spider? What if Gwen Stacy did? It's kind of, exploring other alternatives in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, so
and they announced... Sorry, go ahead.
The whole premise of the comic was told from Uatu the Watcher, who is an omnipresent being looking over Earth and, literally watching what is happening.
Just watching the entire Marvel universe, but forbidden to interfere.
So in doing so, he's telling the tale of, well, this is what happened, but what if X happened? And it seems like, judging by the fact that it looks like one of those frames was Uatu in the full trailer, that this is diving right into him spinning the yarn on what could happen in the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, so this was a show that was announced, I think, when Disney Plus launched. I think this was one of the shows that was announced, and they might have had a couple frames or short footage when they announced it, but this is the first full trailer we've gotten for it, and it looks awesome. We got more of, I think the stuff that they showed early on was Captain Carter. What if Peggy Carter had become Captain America instead of Steve Rogers, or he got the Super Soldier Serum? That stuff looks amazing. I'm very excited about that. I'm surprised they don't call her Captain Britain. It seemed like
that would be because there's already a Captain Britain.
Well, I know, but like this is a what if thing, so why couldn't she be Captain Britain if she got the Soldier Serum? But
from what it seemed like was because Captain Britain is all tied into the mystical and
true
Arthurian legend and all the powers derived. Like literally, Brian Braddock got the powers from Merlin, and then passed on to his sister, etc. Right. But
fine, nerd, fine. I'm just saying she could have had the name. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough. I was actually literally going to say I'm glad they didn't call her Captain Britain because there's already a Captain Britain. But that's the X-Men nerd in me because that's always been tied, Excalibur and all that's been tied to the X-Men for years. So,
right. I'm trying to think of the other stuff we got. What if T'Challa was Star-Lord?
Yes.
I don't know how that happens, but that was cool. And this is the final performance of Chadwick Boseman, I believe. The last thing that he did before he died was lend his voice to this animated series. They did get a lot of the actual MCU characters, actors, I mean, to voice the characters. I don't think Robert Downey Jr. is doing Tony Stark.
RDJ and Evans didn't, but just about everybody else did. Like Hiddleston as Loki, Hemsworth as Thor. I was like, other Chris.
Yeah, you could definitely tell that Hemsworth was Thor. You could definitely tell. It was immediately that I knew Chadwick Boseman was doing T'Challa.
Yeah, even Natalie Portman is as Jane Foster.
Really?
Yeah. So it's.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, there's a ton of it's. I pulled up the Wikipedia page earlier, and it's kind of crazy how many of the actual actors are back for this and names too. So I think it's literally Evans and Downey Jr. are the only two not of the main, like any of the main cast.
Probably because their contract was up.
Right.
They were done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Contracts.
But yeah, I think I know exactly right. That was set up a segue. But I thought it looked great. I thought the animation looked great. And it is cool. It's cool that we're getting it a month, and it's cool. I guess I would like to know how many episodes it is, and how long each episode is.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That they're more than the 20 minutes or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's probably, your standard 20 to 30 minute animated, stock old cartoon type setup.
You would think. Yeah, and it's cool that a lot of the actors are coming back under contractual obligations. And, speaking of contracts, moving into our next story, Kevin Feige, Lord of the MCU over at Marvel Entertainment, architect of the MCU, you could say, he gave an interview this week. We talked about Marvel seeming to be moving away from signing actors to multi-film contracts. The quote was, that got a lot of attention way back when, I think with Scarlett and Chris Hemsworth and Evans and Sam Jackson, said Feige. It varies now. It varies project to project, cast to cast. Really what we want are people that come in, are excited to be in the universe, are excited at the opportunity to do more things as opposed to being locked into contractual obligations. Steve, is there any way you can see this that isn't them just trying to pay actors less money?
No. And in all honesty, I guess the other thing too is when they started all this, yes, they had the mouse behind them, but it was really, especially the four that he mentions, the early days where they didn't know how this shit was going to go. Like that was when they all signed those contracts. That was right after Iron Man hit. Was still a Paramount, wasn't even a Marvel Studios production, and they kind of were winging it. And the fact that they grabbed them for 9 movies back in the day was like, all right, we're committing to this. At this point, they're playing with house money. Like the MCU's the thing, and nobody's going to walk away from the MCU if somebody says, hey, come here, we're going to give you multiple millions of dollars. But I would assume those 9 movie clauses probably said, if we get to 9 movies, you're making a lot of money. And like you said, this might be something to dump that a little.
Yeah, and I think, the first run of the MCU kind of a mixed bag. There was some unknown, like who knew who Chris Hemsworth was before he was cast as
Oh,
Thor?
no.
You know,
Actually there was a video of him and Hiddleston when they were first being cast as Loki and Thor of how everyone was talking about how little they knew who the hell these two guys were.
Yeah, I know. I remember that. Yeah.
Hindsight.
But then on the other side, well, I remember when I heard Scarlett Johansson was going to be Black Widow. I was like, "Are you kidding me? She's an Oscar-nominated actress. She's going to be Black Widow in 1,000 movies or whatever." And I remember where Samuel Jackson said he signed for 9 movies. I was like, "What are they offering Samuel L. Jackson that he signed for so many movies?" And Sebastian Stan too.
Yep.
And Sebastian Stan had been on like a TV show or something. I think.
I
but
can't remember. It was
he wasn't
something.
a movie guy, but
you knew his name.
Yeah. And that was one that I remember. I read that he signed for like 9 movies or something, and immediately I was like, he's gonna play Bucky, and he signed for 9 movies. They're gonna do the Winter Soldier. Like I knew immediately.
Yep.
And that was great, but I feel like they're saying 2 things. I think he's trying to spin this as we want people that are excited to be in the universe, that want to come back and play these roles, so they don't feel obligated, they don't feel like they have to, so they're just like sleepwalking through the role or whatever like that. They want to be excited to be that character. But also I feel like they're saying, like, if people are excited to be these characters, then they might not ask for quite as much money to be these characters because they want to be these characters, I don't know. It just seems like if we cast unknowns that are excited to be in the MCU, then we don't have to, back up the dump truck full of money to Robert Downey Jr.'s house every time we need a cameo or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
And Robert Downey Jr., another one of those names where when they said he was cast as Iron Man, you're like, huh, okay, I guess he's on a redemption tour. In hindsight,
Favreau had to fight to get him cast as Iron Man. The studio did not want him to be cast as Iron Man. Favreau.
And in hindsight, when you're playing yourself, it works out okay.
yeah. So that'll be interesting. I mean, I guess we're not going to see, Meryl Streep show up in the MCU anytime soon. Is probably what that means. But, they obviously have a proven track record with their casting, whether it's an unknown or a Academy Award-winning actress. So,
Yeah, Lord Feige has his, and by the way, I'm running with the Lord Feige thing. That is now his official title.
As far as this podcast goes, yes.
Yes, absolutely. He's got his fingers in a lot of different pies, and I think that'll be, like, he can grab whoever he wants to. Like, to mix all sorts of fables here. He's sitting on the golden goose and can literally just say, "Hey, come act in my movie. You're going to make millions of dollars. Enjoy."
But at the same time, clearly the MCU is can be a star-making vehicle for someone that is unknown, like Chris Hemsworth. But also, if that person does blow up after a couple appearances in the MCU, they're gonna renegotiate their contract if it's not a multi-film contract. So, if in that respect, they might be kind of shooting themselves in the foot and eventually having to shell out more money to get the once unknown, now huge megastar back to play Captain Britain or whoever, Cyclops or whatever. Whoever the new Wolverine's going to be. Like, you're telling me you're not going to sign Wolverine for at least a trilogy?
Right.
Whatever. You're going to sign those X-Men for at least 3 movies, right? Maybe not 9, but you'd think.
Speaking of that, we don't have it on the rundown, but Hugh Jackman apparently on his Instagram shared. I think we both forgot about it. Like we sent it and texted each other, but the Hugh Jackman on his Instagram shared a picture of the Claws and a picture of him and Kevin Feige standing there, and it was very cryptic and it was very weird, and I have no idea what to take of it.
I know. There's a artist, I think he's an Australian artist named Boss Logic, or that's his handle that he goes by on Twitter and Instagram. He's an incredible graphic designer. He does a lot of his own work, but he's also been hired by Marvel to do variant posters for Avengers movies and things like that. So he's a legit artist, but I think was found online. He posted this photo. Is all black, except you can make out the kind of almost just an outline of a black gloved hand with the 3 claws coming out of it. Hugh Jackman screenshotted Boss Logic's post and then posted it on his Twitter with a picture of him standing next to Kevin Feige. Now, I'm pretty sure that picture of him as Kevin Feige I had seen before, and I think it's an old picture.
Yep.
I follow Hugh Jackman on Instagram, and he currently does not have a beard, and his hair looks different than he did. Like in the picture, he does have a beard. His hair is a little. So I'm like, honestly looked at it. I was like, I think this is an old picture.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it was just him messing around, or is there a multiverse? Is there a world where he shows up as for a cameo in Multiverse of Madness as Wolverine? I don't know. He's talked a lot about how he's done after Logan because that's the perfect send-off for the character, which I agree with.
100%.
But it was very strange. He could just be, riling people up, and it kind of died down after a day or two. I think that's probably why you and I forgot about it, because it didn't have too many legs. So I think people maybe were thinking that it was just him goofing around, but time will tell, I guess.
And it worked. It got people talking, so.
Exactly, and we're talking about it right now. So all right, leaving the Marvel universe, moving into the DC universe, we got James Gunn again. We're just probably going to talk about Suicide Squad in some way or another every week until the movie comes
until
out
it drops
in a couple weeks from now, because they are in full huge promotion mode here. We did get a cool quote about Suicide Squad, but we got a couple cool quotes and some more information on the Suicide Squad spin-off show that James Gunn has written and is directing the majority of episodes for HBO Max. It's a spin-off show for the character of Peacemaker. Peacemaker is a character being played by John Cena in the Suicide Squad film. He is a very ridiculous-looking character. Peacemaker is somebody that is obsessed with getting peace to the point where he will kill to get it. He's a little bit of an oxymoron. So we hadn't known much about it other than it was an HBO Max exclusive and that James Gunn had written the entire series himself. He's directing. There's going to be 8 episodes we found out this week. James Gunn is directing 5 of them. And the quote he gave about the show is said, Peacemaker has a really clear set of ideals that I find really interesting. His ethos of, I want peace no matter how many men, women, and children I need to kill to get it, sounds like nonsense, but also makes a lot of sense. As you see in John Cena's performance, how he does not feel good about it, something I thought was the seed of an entire 8-episode show. The character said that he lives in the world of Superman, Batman, and Aquaman, and that is not an easy thing for him to contend with. Puts him in a situation where he has to face the choices he's made throughout his life and the extremity of his views. So I think that sounds pretty interesting. For a show. And again, I know the character of Peacemaker. I'm not super familiar with him. I just knew him as a D-list kind of character. I certainly never read anything with him in it. I'm working my way through the first run of Suicide Squad, so maybe he'll show up in that because I know the movie is based on that first run by John Ostrander. Got that name
there
right
we
this
go.
time, not Dr. Manhattan's real name that I was saying last week 1,000 times like an idiot. But I think watching a character, it reminds me of the Punisher kind of almost, but maybe the Punisher with like a little bit more heart, like someone that's willing to do terrible things for a cause that he thinks is just, but then also stepping back and being like, hey, I'm a monster,
Right.
And
he's like a self-aware Machiavelli.
About that.
It's like self-aware Machiavelli. Like the ends justify the means, but I hate the end or the means, so what do I do?
Yeah, exactly. And at first, when I heard that they were doing a Peacemaker show, I was like, oh, that's a weird character to spin off. But maybe that just means he's going to be great in the movie. Like, you'd think they'd be like, let's make a Harley Quinn show. Because she's a super popular character, and we want people to, watch our shows. And I remember James Gunn saying that HBO Max asked him, if you were going to do a spin-off show, what character would you pick? And he chose Peacemaker. So it was all, it's all from his mind. Which I think is good, and I think it means it's probably going to line up really great with the film. The thing we don't know about it is whether or not it is a prequel or a sequel to the movie Suicide Squad, because from this other quote that we got from James Gunn about Suicide Squad this week, he kind of reiterating the point that anybody could die in this movie at any time. He says about the Suicide Squad movie, he's quoted as saying, it is a really it really is a more grounded story. It's a sad story. One of the most fun things is you don't know who's going to get killed. I think with the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, which he also wrote and directed, you start out knowing that those guys, that they are guys who may have different problems, but at the end of the day, they're all really good people. This isn't the case with Suicide Squad. Some of these characters may end up being good. Some of them are definitely not good. I don't think people think that Star-Lord's head is going to explode in the middle of the movie, but with any of these characters, their heads could explode in the middle of the movie. So they're still being pretty tight-lipped about who's going to make it out of Suicide Squad alive. I know we've talked about this in the last couple of weeks, but the tagline of the movie is "Don't get too attached." So I think we're going to see some probably surprising deaths, and if one of those is John Cena, then we're going to know that Peacemaker show is a prequel series, clearly.
So, it's an easy way to tell.
Yeah. But either way, nothing's changed for me. I'm still super excited about that movie, and based on these quotes, I feel like the movie is going to make me excited for the show. Honestly, I hope that it's a sequel, because I feel like I would rather, if I see the movie and I do get attached to the character of Peacemaker, I'd rather see more of him, and I'd rather see that character progress in some way, rather than just go back and see what led up to him being on the Suicide Squad. In general, that's just my personal opinion, but
stuff like this makes me more excited. Like, I saw the original one. I still haven't seen Birds of Prey. That's on the list.
Got to.
Yeah, it's more the standard finding schedule time with my wife, because I know she would actually want to see it too.
Yeah.
So the problem ends up being, it's going to be a good movie. It's got James Gunn at the helm. There seems to be these intriguing characters. You've got, like, the trailer made me think Idris Elba is going to be the main focus, which inherently means something stupid is going to happen to him from everything that I'm understanding. Is like, James Gunn will find a way to, we're pushing this, so that's not going to be the way that it goes.
Right.
So maybe Peacemaker's the one that makes it out, and this is a sequel.
Yeah, maybe. Never know. And we won't know until August 6th, I think it is. So
we got that on the 6th. We've got What If on the 11th.
Yep.
And then September 3rd is Shang-Chi.
Early November is
Eternals,
right?
Yep. Yeah. In between there, you have DC Fandom in October.
Yeah. But what we don't have from DC and Marvel is San Diego Comic-Con. Both the big two, as they are called, it was announced this week, are going to be skipping San Diego Comic-Con, which is going to be virtual for the second year in a row. It was virtual last year because of COVID-19, obviously, like everything was. And they probably could, I don't know. I was about to say they probably could do an in-person one. I mean, they could do an in-person one, but
right.
I think they probably are wisely assuming that things are still a little bit too up in the air. The whole Delta variant thing is taking hold in California more than other parts of the country right now, so that could be
Florida's
an issue.
giving it a run for its money.
Yeah.
When all else fails, Florida will find a way.
Yeah, you always can count on Florida to be something else. But anyway, it's kind of surprising that they're skipping San Diego Comic-Con, because both studios have a lot happening and a lot to talk about. I mean, besides the fact that I think it's happening in November this year, Comic-Con,
right.
San Diego Comic-Con, although it's going to, again, virtual. And I think it was pretty slimmed down. The virtual version last year wasn't, I don't think they had quite as many big announcements or anything like that because of, COVID concerns and things like that. But, if it's happening in November, Marvel still has
the MCU. It's going to be July 23rd to 25th.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. My info was way wrong about that. I'm a professional researcher and podcaster, ladies and gentlemen. Here I am. Okay, well, I'm wrong about that. But even more so, Marvel, we just talked about all the Marvel stuff that's coming out in the next few months that they could be promoting at San Diego Comic-Con that they're just choosing not to. It makes a little bit more sense for DC, for me, because even though they have a bunch of stuff that they could be promoting, shows and movies and whatnot, they did their own DC Fandom virtual convention last year, which was a huge success for them. It was like hundreds of thousands of people tuned in and watched that stuff, and they dropped big. That's when we found out the cast of the Suicide Squad, all the characters they were playing. It's when we got the first trailer for the Robert Pattinson Batman movie. We got some info on Black Adam, Shazam. We got like so much info at this thing. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense to me that they're going to try to drive more eyeballs to Fandom Part 2, that they would skip San Diego Comic-Con. It seems like DC's trying to make Fandom their own thing, where they're not relying on other conventions to host their stuff, which I think is a smart idea. If you can get numbers every year like you got last year, then great, keep doing it. So a little bit more surprising that Marvel's skipping it and DC, but maybe Marvel's trying to do the same thing. Maybe they're going to announce their own kind of convention in the future. Who knows?
Right.
I don't know.
Or even
they're
just push Disney, D23 so and
they got D23 also.
Yeah.
It still is possible that Sony could be a part of it. We haven't heard anything about them yet, because Sony does still have Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and the Morbius movie, and Spider-Man: No Way Home to talk about. So whether or not we believe 2 out of 3 of those movies are going to be good, still could be exciting to get some new looks and some info on them. So still waiting to hear whether Sony's going to be there, but no DC, no Marvel at San Diego Comic-Con this year. But keep an eye out for DC's Fandom, which is going to happen sometime in October this year, because I'm sure we'll be getting more information on Matt Reeves' The Batman movie and The Flash and all that stuff. I'd be surprised if we didn't get a trailer for The Flash at DC Fandom this year.
Yeah, that's gonna. We'll see what comes out of that. But something that there's
be a lot for us to talk about that week.
Oh, I'm sure. Something there's been way too much information about lately, which I don't mind. Patty Jenkins is still talking about Rogue Squadron. So,
and I'm fine with it. Keep talking about it, Patty.
Like,
I want to hear all about it.
One of these days, I'll bring down some of the covers. The art on the Rogue Squadron series was phenomenal for being a mid-90s book.
They always had great artists on the covers of those books. Even though I never read any of those books, I would always, even when I was a kid, I would pick them up and stare at the cover, being like, I know I'm not going to read this, but I like imagining these characters that are, that I love. I like them imagining them doing something, because they're never going to make any more Star Wars movies, so this picture on this book is all I have.
Look at look at this. There's an X-Wing on this. Okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly. We got another quote from Patty Jenkins about Rogue Squadron, and this should be a cause of joy and celebration for anybody upset at the sequel trilogy for, quote-unquote, not having a plan. That's a big complaint for the sequel trilogy for people that didn't like it. Steve's one of those people that complains about it like that. I guess I am too, even though
you're wearing a Rise of Skywalker shirt.
I know, and this, hey, you know how I feel about Rise of Skywalker. I like this shirt, and I like Star Wars. So hey, I even show love for the ones that I don't like as much.
There you go.
That's how much I am into Star Wars. I love it, and I forgive it when it does me wrong. I forgive it, and I wear a Rise of Skywalker shirt, because that's just the kind of man that I am.
Beautiful.
Also, somebody gave it to me. I didn't buy it. But so anyway, in regards to having a plan, she wasn't addressing that specifically, but she did have this to say. One, she said she had been working on the movie for 6 months before it was even announced. So they're about a year into production on this movie already, which is exciting, because it means we might be getting close to casting announcements or character descriptions, or just more info, and she's certainly talking about it a lot, so that wouldn't be surprising. But the quote she gave recently, she said, "It's an entirely different way of working. I'm on the phone with all of them and doing Zoom meetings with everybody involved in Star Wars all the time. I'm fairly free to do the story we want to do, but you really need to know who's done what, who is doing what, where it goes, how it works, and what designs have been done before. It's a whole other way of working that I'm getting up to speed on." Excuse me. So she's saying she's on the phone with all of them, everyone involved in Star Wars. I like to imagine that she's talking to Dave Filoni.
Yeah, it's got to be like Filoni, Favreau, Kathleen Kennedy, Leland Chee.
Yeah.
Like the whole story group.
And talking about, Dave Filoni is the puppet master, seemingly, of the Disney Plus Star Wars television shows. And, they're clearly making sure that any steps forward they're taking together, they're taking as one unit, and they're not going to step on each other's toes in any way. And I think even some of the stuff they did in the sequel trilogy contradicted some stuff that happened in comics,
Yep.
which was supposed to be canon. So come on, JJ, check in with that story group, buddy. Too late. But I don't know, what is this, fill your canonized heart with joy?
It does. And as someone who, cut his teeth on the old EU, where there were a lot of things that contradicted a lot of other things. And even though there was a story group, it was fast and loose. Not bad by any stretch, but pretty solid. And then you go through the mess that was the sequel trilogy as far as a continuity standpoint goes. It's
debatable.
What's that? Debatable continuity in general.
And I said it's debatable because I think I like the sequel trilogy more than you do, but we don't have to get into that right now.
No, I actually like the sequel trilogy. It's just we're getting into this right now. I like the sequel trilogy in general. It's just the lack of overarching, like JJ literally said, somebody should have sat down and just said, "Hey, we should have a fluid story through this whole thing."
Yeah, it's surprising to me. I'm 2/3 of the way through rewatching the sequel trilogy.
Okay.
And when it comes to not following through on storylines that are set up, I honestly don't see a whole lot of problem between Force Awakens and Last Jedi.
No.
I do see a problem between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. So I lay the blame a lot on Rise of Skywalker for kind of dropping the ball on wrapping everything up. I'm surprised. I understand why Disney ran back to J.J. Abrams to be like, you got to clean up this. We got this backlash from this movie that we all loved while it was being made and thought it was amazing, and now we're scared of it. Because some whiny people didn't like it or whatever. But I'm shocked that they didn't. They just ran back to JJ. They should have put JJ and Rian Johnson in a room together and said, okay, both of you guys figure this out.
100%.
Going forward, instead of just like, yeah, okay, now do whatever you want to do. Anyway.
Right.
Can't get into that much. Anyway, what was I going to say? I don't know. Rogue Squadron, I'm excited for it.
100%. I'm right with you.
And it's cool. I mean, they clearly, I think I said something like this before, where it seemed like they were kind of like, okay, we're going to do the sequel trilogy, and now it is what it is, and it's out of the way, and now we can start kind of doing our Marvel MCU kind of moves, but in a different way. And we're going to start building with Mandalorian, and we're going to kind of go out from there. And this is, we're going to keep the continuity steady, and we learn from our mistakes with the not having a straight arc planned out for the sequel trilogy. Right. And this speaks to that for me. I mean, Rogue Squadron is going to be the first film since the sequel trilogy, and they are clearly taking steps to make sure that it is in line with what they're doing on Disney Plus and probably everywhere else as well. So very excited about that. Jumping from Star Wars to a universe I've titled Miscellaneous because they don't fall under one giant corporate umbrella. This is a story that I've been waiting to hear since 2019 when I started reading the incredible comic by James Tynion IV for Boom Studios, Something is Killing the Children. Immediately after reading the first issue of that book, I said, someone's going to make this into a Netflix show. This is going to be adapted, and it's going to be great. And here we are, finding out this week that Netflix has ordered a script to be written for a pilot episode of an adaptation of Something is Killing the Children. Mike Flanagan, who's the director of Dr. Sleep, and a producer named Trevor Macy are going to have been hired to write the script. Now, this is no guarantee that the script is going to go into production, or that if they do make a pilot, that pilot is going to end up going to series. But this has been an incredibly successful Eisner Award-winning comic book run. It's a monster hunting story. It's very R-rated.
Yeah.
I kind of hope they keep it that way if they decide to move forward with it, or do it in a way that does justice to the story. It's really terrifying. It's unsettling at times. It's straight up just a horror story. It's great. I know I turned you on to it during quarantine, and you're working your way through the collected editions of it. I really hope this happens, and that's all I have to say about it. It's great. It's not unlike any story you've ever heard before, but it's told in a way that feels fresh and has just such energy to it. That's part of the way it's written. It's also part of the way it is drawn, and the layouts of the pages are so. You're going to have to find a way to capture that kind of energy to tell a story that, it's not that we've seen before, but, we've seen small town, innocent, minding your own business town attacked by hideous monsters before. That's happened in many horror movies and things like that before. So I hope they find the right energy. They're able to match the energy of the comic within whatever adaptation this ends up being. And if this script doesn't get made by Netflix, I guarantee you someone else is going to adapt this sometime. So, if you're not reading Something is Killing the Children, you should be. There are collected editions of it. If you like horror books, or if you're a fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but you always wanted it to be more terrifying and more bloody, then you should be reading Something is Killing the Children. It's excellent.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer cranked up to 13, and combined with that Stranger Things 80s type weird aesthetic.
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
It's like, yeah, I actually put the other website I write for, Nunes Magician, we did a comics roundup for the first half of 2021, and I put issue 14 of Something is Killing the Children as like I think it was in my top 2 or 3.
So good.
It was like because it's at the end of the last collected edition I just read, and it was like the first book was really good, and then the second trade was like kept it at that level, and then it's just like continually ramping up, and Deladera's art really just complements the whole story, and it's gonna be good if they can capture what that book does.
Yeah, and that's gonna be the only problem, really, because
it'll be the same thing like we were talking about with Y, though. Like there's a phenomenally compelling book that if they don't capture what's going on, like that, if they can't capture the feel of the book, then the show is gonna fall on its face.
Yeah, but I guess they could do. I don't want to say that's 100% guaranteed, because I'm still working my way through Sweet Tooth on Netflix, and that captures some stuff from the book, but it also is very its own thing, and it's reinventing the story or the way the story is told in the book in a way that serves the medium of television better. So if they can do something like that too, then it's possible to do that. But because the energy of the book feels so specific to me when I'm reading it, I guess that's why I'm kind of honing in on that. But I'm sure that there's a way that people that are smarter than me, that are better at writing scripts for television, which is something I've never done before, will be able to do in a way that complements the book, if not, if not feels like it, directly like it.
Nice.
So I'm excited for that. I hope it goes to series. I hope we get volumes and volumes of the book, and I also hope that we get seasons and seasons of the show, if it ever happens, or movie. We'll see what happens. Something else is coming to Netflix. We got a new trailer for The Witcher Season 2.
Yeah.
And I watched this trailer. I thought it looked great, but I didn't watch Witcher Season 1, Steve, so I don't have a whole lot to say about this other than it looked great, looked pretty, and had lots of Game of Thrones vibes. I don't even know if I even saw a trailer for Witcher Season 1, By the
You
way, I
probably
knew that it
didn't.
was coming out. I
kinda-
knew that Henry Cavill was in it. I knew what he looked like.
Yep.
I must have seen a trailer at some point. I just don't remember anything about it.
Yeah.
It's very Games of Thronesy in my uneducated opinion. But Steve, you watched Witcher season 1. What did you think about the trailer for season 2?
I did, and I played The Witcher 3, which, if you get a chance, it was one of the best games I've ever played.
Okay.
They, so season 1, also very good season of television. To put it in context, my wife loved it. Usually that's a sign that it's a good show on top of being a good nerd show.
Right.
So, yeah. So out of context, she was like, all right, this was good. I'm like, okay, cool. We're onto something. Doesn't hurt that Henry Cavill is the lead that, half the time has his clothes somewhere near somewhat off.
Is a chiseled, gorgeous
So,
specimen of manhood.
Right. I'm sure that probably helps the cause too, but the trailer for season 2 seems to be focusing now on him and Ciri and heading to Kaer Morhen, where Witchers are trained in the whole 9 yards, and it'll be an interesting way to move the story along. I'm looking forward to seeing season 2. I probably will go back and rewatch season 1 because it feels like it's been 7 years, but that was only because 2020 lasted 7 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And apparently season 2 is dropping on December 17th. So something to save the Christmas vacation in there. Save up a little vacation time and just coast through that. Ideally, not watching it during the day.
There are books also. Aren't there also books?
Yes. So
Okay.
I want to say it was a weird one where the books were based off the original video game. Like, the first video game came out, and then the books, and then 2, and then 3 came out for modern consoles. Like, the original one was way back when on, 16-bit type stuff. And then it's kind of progressed through the years. I can't remember it's a Polish author that wrote the books that it's all based off of. Can't remember his name at all. I'm sure it'll come to me right after the fact.
Okay.
But either way, there's a bunch of backstory on it. But it's a compelling watch. I would advise, somewhere in your list of crap to watch, throw it in there.
On the ever-growing list of stuff that I should watch.
Mm-hmm. It never gets smaller. It's
No.
like that to-do list at work. You're just like, why does this keep somehow growing? I keep finishing things, and it gets longer.
Yeah, it's like a weird magic trick. I don't know what happens. It's like the never-ending, I don't know, glass of water or something. I
There
don't
you
know
go.
If that makes sense.
We'll go with it.
Anyway, moving on to comic books, ladies and gentlemen. End of every episode, we spend some time talking about comic books because that's where most of this stuff comes from. So many wonderful adaptations of comic books. Many of the movies we love, TV shows we love, would not exist if they hadn't been in comic book form. First, we got a couple cool DC announcements this week. Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale are returning to the world of The Long Halloween for Batman The Long Halloween Special. Now, we've talked about Long Halloween a little bit when they put out the trailer for the animated adaptation of Long Halloween. Long Halloween is a seminal Batman story. It's like a murder mystery kind of thing. I don't want to give too much away about it. It's a kind of like a noir story. It's a semi sequel to Frank Miller's Batman Year One, which shows kind of the origin of Bruce Wayne coming back to Gotham City, parallel with James Gordon joining the Gotham City Police Force. Batman Year One is very much the inspiration for Batman Begins. They took a lot of imagery and ideas from Batman Year One for Batman Begins, the Christian Bale movie. Long Halloween is a semi-sequel to Batman Year One, where in Year One, Batman is straight up just fighting gangsters and mobsters and no real supervillains. Long Halloween kind of shows how Gotham City transitioned from mobsters and gangsters to wild, outlandish villains like the Joker or Poison Ivy, Catwoman, things like that. It involves a ton of Batman's rogues gallery. I love a good story that weaves in tons of different characters and villains, and this is definitely that. Harvey Dent plays a big role. There's definitely a little bit of Long Halloween in the Dark Knight film. So this is great. And Long Halloween also has a sequel called Dark Victory, which introduces Robin. So those three books, like Year One, Long Halloween, and Dark Victory, are kind of like, if you want to learn how Batman became Batman and got established in Gotham City up to the point where he has a Robin, those are the three books that you should be reading. If I'm going to introduce somebody to comic books and try to get them to love Batman, I'm starting them on Year One and then going to Long Halloween. And the fact that the original creators, Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb, are coming back to do a new mystery story that spins out of the events of Long Halloween, of the original story, very exciting to somebody like me who loves Batman, who loves the original book. I don't know what this could possibly be, because it kind of seemed like, if you've read Long Halloween, not a ton of places you can go, I guess, at the end. Maybe. This is going to be a double-sized, one-shot issue, 48-page book that comes out this October, I believe.
Oh.
And I am crazy excited for it, because I just want more of that world. Tim Sale is a great artist. The way he draws Batman is super unique. No one draws the characters the way he does, and I'm just very excited for this. Jeff Loeb is a really good storyteller. He's written some of my favorite Batman books, and I'm pumped. Steve, you ever read Long Halloween? I feel like you haven't.
No, I was just hearing your synopsis of Year One. That I was like, all right, now I know what I got to put on the old Amazon wish list.
Yeah, there you go.
now that you've successfully brought me down the DC rabbit hole, so
yes, I'm gonna pull you in.
Yes. So this by the end of this podcast, I'll have been well versed on anything that Mike can throw at me.
Yeah.
So.
What do you mean the end of this podcast? We're gonna do this until the world ends. I don't know. What do you mean? We're never gonna stop doing this podcast.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
He says optimistically on episode 9.
Hey, we made it 9. We're almost to double digits.
That's true. So close. Yeah, I'm really excited for this, because there's even, spoiler alert, there's kind of like a little bit of a twist ending at the end of Long Halloween, and so that's where you kind of think like, oh, I know everything. And there, in the article, the announcement article, they said, you think you know everything about that story, but maybe you don't. And so clearly somebody had an idea somewhere to keep going. And, it's just a one-shot book, so it's not going to be, a super, it's a, Long Halloween is it's a healthy story. I think the original run took place over an entire year, so it's a full 12 issues or whatever.
Yep.
But I'm super excited for that, and it's coming out this October, just in time for actual Halloween, I assume. That's some good planning on the part of DC and Warner Bros., I gotta say. And speaking of DC and Warner Brothers comic announcements, we got word that the great writer Tom King, who just seems like he's announcing cool project after cool project these days. It seems like DC must have just said, okay, you can do whatever you want. You want to do a Supergirl book? Great. Here's Supergirl. You want to do whatever, Strange Adventures with Adam Strange? Yeah, here you go. Do a Strange Adventures book. You want to do Human Target? Yeah, let's do Human Target. Tom King and Greg Smallwood announced that they're doing a Human Target miniseries for DC. Human Target is a lesser-known DC character. I think he's had there's been a couple characters that call themselves a Human Target. Most well-known one is a guy named Christopher Chance, who's like a professional decoy, kind of. Like, he will uncover a plot to maybe kidnap somebody or assassinate somebody. He will go in and pose as that person, making him the Human Target. He will pose as the person that's trying to be killed or kidnapped or what have you, in an effort to stop that from happening. And there was, I think he was played by somebody in a later season of Arrow. He had an arc so he has been portrayed in live action before, but certainly hasn't really been a mainstay of comics in a long time. And this, to me, seems like it could be something great. Tom King seems to do very well taking maybe either lesser known or maybe characters that haven't been in the spotlight too much, and finding a great story around, like, I mean, obviously Mr. Miracle is a great example of that, where it's this top tier comic book story, like must read of the genre.
Yeah.
And who was really reading Mr. Miracle or caring about Mr. Miracle before that happened?
Oh yeah.
He certainly wasn't.
Vision.
Not that he's a mainstream character now, but he certainly was much less so before that run. And same thing for Adam Strange. I didn't know much about Adam Strange at all before I started reading Strange Adventures, which it's not over yet, and it's been an incredible run. And I think maybe do you think maybe because they're lesser known characters, he's allowed to do more with them, because it's not like he's trying to reinvent Superman or something,
Well, it could be, but like I mentioned, like that run on Vision he did. At the time, I mean, that was 2015-ish. Like Vision was a thing in the MCU when he wrote that, right?
I don't know. See, I didn't read it when it was coming out. I just read I found out about it later.
Yeah.
I found out I started reading Tom King when his run on Batman.
Okay.
A couple issues that caught my eye on his run on Batman, and then
Gotcha.
I went back and I was like, oh, he did this? Oh, he did. And the guy that used to run the comic book store, goes, oh, you haven't read Vision? Vision is a must read. It's top tier graphic novel, like 100%. You have to read the Vision. I was like, oh, geez, okay, I'll read it.
Why can I totally picture Jeff saying that?
Yeah, exactly. I miss that store, by the way.
Oh, 100%.
So bad. This is a tangent.
100%.
I miss. And if he ever wants to open another comic book store, I'm in. I would help fund it. I miss it so bad.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but we got what we got.
Quick tangent.
So, quick Syracuse comic drama tangent. Which, for the record, I have real books in my hand again. Holy shit!
That's right.
It's a great feeling.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and the new X-Men one by Duggan and Pepe Larraz, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Good start.
I haven't gotten to. I put that on my pull list. I haven't gotten to the store this week to pick it up.
I happened to have gone in on
this
Wednesday, so I was like, oh, okay. I'm just going to grab that.
Nice. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I could spend so long in a comic book store just staring at books that I know I'm not going to buy. I just like
100%.
looking at covers. Yep. I just like being there. I don't know what it is.
Yep.
But yeah, Tom King he's got an incredible record. Strange Adventures is wrapping up. Supergirl just started. Supergirl's off to a good start so far. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. His Batman run I thought was really great for a while. I think it got away from him at the end. It got a little crazy. He's on Batman Catwoman right now too, which was kind of supposed to be the end of his Batman arc that got moved around, but it's a great looking book. That book is a little confusing because it's dealing with multiple timelines at the same time. But anyway, he's someone that when he understands a character, he understands them more than anybody else ever possibly could. And again, I think he succeeds very well when he's able to stretch a little bit with a character that is allowed to be played with and allowed to be stretched a little bit. So,
yep.
I'm very interested in this because I don't really have any other association with a character of Human Target. I'm able to go in with no expectations at all, and I'm pumped for it. That's all I gotta say.
You had me at Tom King, so as soon as like we talked, as soon as when you tried to turn me on to Mr. Miracle, you were like, "Oh, Tom King." I was like, "All right, I'll buy it." Sold.
Yeah, it's the guy that wrote Vision.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. I actually turned someone else on to Vision because I said it's the guy that wrote Mr. Miracle, and they're like, "Oh, okay." So it works both ways.
It's all about perspective, man.
Yeah. You read anything else? What else you get at the store this week besides X-Men?
The latest Once and Future, because that's still running. I know because Something's Killing the Children took a break.
It's back now.
Is it back now?
2 issues into the new run. Yeah.
Oh, damn it! Now I got to update the pull list.
I know, man.
And then, oh god, it's over there. Spider-Man. The new Zdarsky little mini-series that he's doing on what if Spider-Man didn't give up the symbiote.
That's right. I heard that. Yeah.
God, what the hell is that called? This is phenomenal audio, by the way.
No, that's great. Yeah,
Spider
another
Shadow.
What story. Marvel's still doing it.
Spider-Man, Spider Shadow.
Right.
Phenomenal so far. And I mean,
Really.
Zdarsky coming off this run of Daredevil, which has been great as well. Like,
Yeah.
He's
Heard
kind of at the
incredible
top
things
of
about
his game.
Daredevil run.
Yeah. So, and he's done a couple of, like, he did the Spider-Man life story stuff.
Yep.
And so he seems to get much in your wheelhouse, the ground level type folks, even when they're possessed by alien symbiotes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Street level vigilantism. I'm all about it. And yeah, he's definitely someone that understands that kind of thing for sure.
Very nice.
I a week or two ago, I'm gonna say I had a little bit too much to drink one night, and a couple days later, I got an Amazon package at my door, and it showed up with Alan Moore's Swamp Thing Volume 4 and
Nice.
a hardcover edition of Batgirl Year One.
Oh, there you go.
Which I've read before, but now I have a beautiful hardcover edition of it, so I am reading that at the moment, rereading that, which is super cool. I mean, obviously similar to, we just mentioned Batman Year One. This is like kind of the origin of Batgirl and how she comes into the Bat family. Super great story. I know, it came out years ago, but if anyone's interested in reading a cool, pretty much standalone Bat family story, it kind of expands that aspect of Gotham City. It's definitely worth looking into. And I haven't started the 4th volume of Alan Moore Swamp Thing yet, but I can't say enough about the greatness of Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run that I've read so far. I mean, everyone knows him from Watchmen and V for Vendetta and all the great things he does, but don't miss out on his Swamp Thing run. If you like weird magic, crazy horror stuff, then, get in on Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. It's incredible. And, that's a review of a book that came out, 30 years ago?
Yeah, something like
years
that.
ago, but still, I think it bears repeating for people that maybe are new to comics that haven't gone back that far. It's worth getting into because it's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the equivalent of saying, go check out God Loves Man Kills. Like, Claremont at his finest for the X-Men. But it was 40 years ago. Go read it.
But
Still pertinent today.
But doesn't mean that you shouldn't read it if you are a fan of comics or the superhero genre.
Yep.
And you want to read these seminal stories. That's one.
Yep. Go do it. Go pick up more Swamp Thing. Go pick up, some old school whatever, and it gives you a whole new perspective on what you're reading and what you're seeing. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's our public service announcement for the day.
That's right.
Go read
and
old
with
crap.
That, I think we're all done, unless you got something else, Steve. I think I'm all done.
No, I think that about wraps it. If you guys would, if you're still listening, please like, review, subscribe, ring that bell on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. Any podcast reviews on Apple Podcasts would be well appreciated. Catch us on whatever your podcatcher of choice is. I don't know why I slowed down there. But yeah, as you can tell, it's about 11 o'clock at night and we've all had a busy day. So I would say that's about a wrap from us.
I think that's it. Someday we'll keep this to an hour or less, but
today was not that day.
Today was not the day. You know what? Maybe we never will, but maybe that's just what we are.
Alrighty. See ya.
Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.